Are we filming?
Yeah.
Oh, blarney. Hey, welcome to the Whole Loaf, a holistic approach to building strong relationships and healthy lives, or something like that. Healthy lives and strong relationships. I have got to get the title of our show down, and I got to figure out what it is.
Get a cue card.
Anyway, my name is Paul Bertzloff. I am here with Deborah Murray, food stylist to the stars and author of 17 different cookbooks, and my wife of 28, going on 29 years, Suzanne. And this is our, what is it? Our St. Patty's Day special, if you could not tell.
Yes.
Yep, if you could not tell. So I got to start off.
I
got to start off.
I got to hear this.
What did the homesick Dubliner say on St. Patrick's Day?
No.
The homesick Dubliner, that's a person from Dublin, Ireland. Okay.
Right,
What did they say? Yes. What did they say on St. Patrick's Day? Irish, I was home. I know. They only get worse. They only get worse. Yes. So we have an awful lot going on here, and we've got some good home-cooked recipes, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
So some different traditions, some different ways of doing things. I am actually, they're going to let me cook a little bit tonight.
We're excited. Which means possibly less talking and more cooking.
No. It doesn't mean it's going to be any shorter. I'm still going to be talking. I'm still going to be sharing with you. But I'm going to share with you one of my recipes for corned beef that I absolutely positively love. And it was a person from my old church up in St. John, Ocala, Marie Tillis, who actually shared this with me. So I gave Marie credit out there for this. But you know, St. Patrick's Day has not always been this ruckus holiday.
Right.
Okay, it has not always been celebrated with huge parades and green rivers and drinking a bunch of green beer. Okay, it wasn't always celebrated wearing green. And so it just kind of developed like that over the years. So actually, St. Patrick's Day, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Was established in 1631. And it started off as this modest kind of holiday, a religious holiday honoring Ireland's patron saint, St. Patrick, who actually died on March 17th in 461 AD. All right, and so it started off as this modest little holiday. And it was during the 1900s when on March 17th, Irish immigrants who lived in the United States started celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And so they started wearing green, they started eating corned beef and cabbage, and they started celebrating St. Patrick's Day. I read someplace too. Yeah, with the parades and everything. I read someplace that it was actually started in St. Augustine as well. But I'm not sure that that's true. I think it was New York City. But St. Augustine, Florida's got something to do with it as well. And it's really kind of interesting because on St. Patrick's Day, you know, I don't know about you, but I automatically think about corned beef.
Yes.
All right? I mean, I just, for some reason, I love corned beef. But in Ireland, corned beef is not that popular.
Right.
Yeah, so it started off here with a celebration in the United States that corned beef and cabbage became popular. And I thought it was kind of interesting. Deb was sharing with me before we started filming here. That's because corned beef is basically salted beef, right?
That's
it's pure beef.
It's not beef that's cooked in corn.
Yeah, there's no corn in it.
They called it corned beef because what would happen is the salt granules that they would preserve the meat in were as large as pieces of corn. Okay. That's why they started calling it corned beef. But back then, the Irish people would actually raise the cattle, but they never got to eat the cattle. So they would prepare it, put it in the salt, and then it would be take off to be sold. So when the Irish Americans here in the United States, when they saw it available for sale, it warmed their hearts that was something that was from their mother.
It reminded them of home.
Yeah,
and so corned beef and cabbage became more and more popular.
Exactly.
So St. Patrick, or the patron saint of St. Patrick's Day, is actually known for bringing Christianity to the island of Ireland.
He did.
Or to Ireland. And you ready for this? He lived in the 5th century, so he lived in the 400 ADs. And he was actually born in Roman Britain. So he was not even Irish. Wasn't even Irish. Somewhere around 14 or 16 years of age, he was actually captured by Irish raiders, Irish pirates. And they took him and they basically made him a slave where he lived in Northern Ireland and he served as a shepherd.
Yep.
And then somewhere around the age of 20, he was able, we're not really sure how, but he was able to escape his captors. He made it back to England. He studied for the ministry. And then he felt the call to go back to Ireland and to bring the gospel to Ireland. And you may have known there's several different legends out there that talk about St. Patrick, about this most famous religious figure. One of those includes the famous story of how St. Patrick drove all the snakes out of Ireland. And there are no snakes in Ireland. And they attribute it to Patrick, and well, that's kind of a fallacy. And you know what's really kind of interesting? Because I was kind of Googling, like, why are there no snakes in Ireland?
Right.
Okay, trying to look for the answer. And what was kind of funny was the first story that popped up. It was on March 5th so just a couple of weeks before St. Patrick's Day, March 5th of 2020, that the country of Ireland, 2020, that Ireland recorded its very first poisonous snake bite on March 5th, 2020. See, there were no snakes in Ireland, but it did not prohibit people from having snakes as pets. They finally got out, and so now there are snakes in Ireland. So now we got all kinds of stuff going on here. We're going to jump into this, but just a quick note. You know, Irish, we're not known for green. I mean, isn't that amazing? You know, Ireland, the initial color of the flag was blue.
I did not.
Yes, it was blue. But it was Henry VIII claimed himself to be king of Ireland in the 1500s. And Henry VIII's flag was blue. And so in the revolt of 1641, the rebellion against England, well, the Irish started wearing green. And hence the famous green colors.
I like that.
And
I wouldn't mind the blue either.
I know. But anyway, I don't have any green. This is like the only green I have. I'm a winter color kind of guy, you know, anyway. But you know, one last thing is like, he often used shamrocks. You know, St. Patrick is famous for shamrocks, right? And that's because he used the shamrock to describe, but this is a four-leaf clover. Never mind. But the shamrock to describe the Trinity. And he used it, tradition has it, that he used it as an evangelistic tool. But St. Patrick, he went back to the place that held him as a slave. And he served there for 40 years, spreading the gospel. And so St. Patrick was truly a servant leader. He was a servant in the greatest sense of the word. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But I'm going to share with you first. I'm going to serving. We're going to talk about serving some good old corned beef. And my very simple recipe is we just take corned beef, okay? And I think it's, who'd you say's got it on sale right now?
Aldi's has it on sale. Aldi's has the best price. Everybody else is almost $4.
Okay, So, you know, and so I just took a thing of corned beef. You take it out of the package, fat side stays up, okay, and that's because the fat side will do what? It keeps it kind of...
It just bastes the meat, makes it, tenderizes it.
Keeps it moist, And so I use the spice packet, the flavor packet that comes with it. I just sprinkle it on. You can take either a little bit of beer and pour some beer in the bottom of the pan, not a whole lot, just a little bit, or even just water. Make sure it's wrapped up tight. I used aluminum foil on one. I put a lid on the other. And I cook it at 325, 1 hour per pound or until it's tender. You take a fork into it and make it tender. And so after it's cooked for several hours, like each one of these cooked for about 3.5 hours today, what I do, and this is my secret. This is my secret.
Suzanne says it's outstanding.
For corned beef. All I do is I take brown sugar. Okay, so I take, eye it up, right? So take some brown sugar, and then I take some spicy mustard. Okay, that's all it is. Some Dijon or some spicy mustard. And I'm not a real big fan of mustard.
I
am not. I'm not a fan of mustard or ketchup. And you just mix up some brown sugar and some mustard. And that's all I am doing here. I'm going to make it into kind of a paste. And I'm going to put the paste on top of the corned beef. And I'm going to stick it back in the oven. And I'm just going to let it just kind of cook a little bit, kind of caramelize, and then pull it out. You normally let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. It needs to cool a little bit.
Let it rest.
You cut it against the grain. Important that you cut it across the grain. And you can cut it to whatever thickness you like, whatever you're serving it for. And then dig on in.
That sounds
It is excellent.
That the done one there?
This is the finished one right here.
Looks like a ham.
And it is,
so good.
And it is excellent. It is excellent.
Like
I said, you can kind of direct the taste of it. If you like a lot of mustard, use more mustard. If not, but it is excellent. It is excellent. And
it's so simple.
It is. It's very simple and it is very good. And trust me, you'll enjoy it.
And you use the little season pack it comes with. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. I do.
Which is basically pickling spice, just so you know. So if you ever wanted to if you ever got one in and you didn't have it, or if you wanted to enhance on the flavor, just buy a bottle of pickling spice.
Perfect.
That's all
That's all it is.
Yep.
And so that's the paste that I use, and I just pour it on top, spread it out, and then I go ahead and I continue to bake it.
Now, do you keep it covered when you're baking it?
I do not. So at this point
so now we want it crispy.
Yep, and I will even, at times if I need to, I'll even turn the broiler on for a few minutes as well.
Nice.
But just make sure that.
I think you're making a ham.
It is,
Isn't that great?
I love that.
Very simple, and it is excellent. And if you make cabbage, I'm not a big cabbage eater.
I love it.
I am not a big cabbage eater.
Well, what we rather have to me the cabbage is the payoff. Like I only want a sliver of corned beef, but I could eat a half a head of cabbage. And what we do with ours is, I don't do this step, which I cannot wait to do.
Yeah.
But I take the juice from the corned beef and I cook my cabbage and my carrots and my potatoes in it and onions. And I'm telling you, Navarre and I love it so much. Last night I talked to her because I was preparing for the show.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm in my happy spot, Mom. And she just had this big bowl of cabbage.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
so good for you.
See, we're one-take wonders, and
Yeah.
this is the kind of stuff that you sit
I
there and
forgot
go, you've got to be kidding me, right? But anyway, but there it is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. But as far as the cabbage, if you're gonna cook cabbage, you know, we normally just boil it, right?
Right.
Or you can steam it or whatever. But your recipe for it came out absolutely excellent as well.
And that was just cooking it in the broth. Now, if I'm cooking it, in a pressure cooker, it's 10 minutes with the broth. But if you're using the stovetop method, I do almost an hour. I like it very tender.
Yeah.
But the pickling spice and the brine from the corned beef, and we use beer. We use 1 can of beer to 1 brisket.
Okay.
And what I found with the beer is, obviously the alcohol cooks down, but the malt and the flavors of the beer go well with the brisket, but it also decreases the saltiness.
Yeah, and I just had a little bit for cabbage, and it is excellent.
It's
So
really
you just
good.
take the leftover juices.
Yep.
Take the brisket out, take corned beef out, just use the juices, cut up your
Outstanding.
cabbage, and let her cook. And it is
And
outstanding.
speaking of let her cook,
Yeah, let her cook.
I can't wait to
What are you
taste
cooking over
that over
Well,
there.
just so y'all know, we have 5 recipes we're sharing with you tonight, so we're gonna go through this pretty doggone quick. So this is gonna be a Reuben dip, and it is excellent, and if you have extra,
Corned beef.
Corned beef.
thank you, corned beef left over, you're just gonna cut it up in little fine pieces, and then we're gonna add a little bit of Swiss cheese, cream cheese, a little bit of sour cream, Thousand Island, and of course, some sauerkraut. So right now, all it's doing is just making sure that everything is cooked down, or you can actually bake it, but it is ready for you to
You
try.
gotta try it, Paul.
So,
So I've got one of my pretzel chips here. Is that what I'm doing?
yeah,
And you gotta remember, Suzanne, too, like I myself, I could eat this whole corned beef in one sitting.
Yes.
The day after St. Patty's Day, the $4 a pound corned beef is down to
It's
like $1 or
cheap.
something a pound. That's when you load up, and then you can do things like make that Reuben dip. You know what we used to do with
Right.
Reuben dip up in Minnesota? The next day, we would refrigerate it, and then we'd take a little melon baller, turn it into little balls, roll them in panko, and put them in the air fryer. So we'd make Reuben, like little
Oh.
bite-sized sandwich balls. They were delicious.
Yeah.
But it's all the flavors. It's just
I
There's
love
actually a local restaurant that does that. They sell the Reuben balls
yeah,
following.
they're so good, but it's all those same
You like this?
ingredients.
That is amazing. Okay, that right there,
I told you, isn't that
absolutely,
outstanding?
positively
And
amazing.
Suzanne put a twist on it with some of her little, I never had sour cream in it. I love the idea of the sour cream in it.
something easy, right?
I love it. All right,
Yes, excellent.
so
Okay.
speaking of leftovers, this is what we do with our leftovers, Navarre and I, because again, we love corned beef. I'm not Irish. My late husband was, and my daughter loves being Irish. She got married on St. Patrick's Day. You both were at the wedding.
I did it.
You
Yeah.
did the
Yeah, I did
wedding.
the wedding, uh-huh.
You were at the wedding. I mean, it's one of those holidays we adore. So what we did is we brought in a food truck for the wedding.
I
And for
remember.
the appetizers, we were serving corned beef tacos. So what you're going to do is we have the little street corn tortillas. I'm taking some corned beef. I'm taking some of my cooked cabbage, but I also like to have a little bit of crunch. So we're gonna put a little bit of raw cabbage in there. And then Paul and Suzanne, the secret sauce is what makes it. We're gonna take
Secret sauce.
Guinness Stout, and I'm gonna post it for you. You need to make these with your leftovers because your family's gonna go crazy. And it's just a fun way to change up the tradition.
So take the Guinness Stout.
I
What are we
mix
doing?
it with horseradish.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to open this?
Don't let it go to waste. We're gonna mix that with horseradish,
Okay.
with some sour cream and a little bit of mayonnaise, and this is what you get. And I had already pre-done it because I knew we had a lot of recipes we wanted to get to. But see what you think about that. The horseradish works back with the corned beef. The Guinness just works so good with all those flavors. Isn't that nice? Ready, Suzanne? You wanna try one? It's
Just little,
so-
they're just little
I'll
flour
just take a
tortillas.
bite of his.
Yep.
Okay, that's
Just-
right.
Yep,
You guys
little flour
kiss, so
in.
you
Yeah.
can have the same
Yeah.
food.
Excellent, excellent.
Isn't that
Yes,
fun?
yes.
So now that we're on the subject of Navarre, real quick, I'm gonna post this recipe, but these little cupcakes are just amazing.
Awesome.
Yes.
Because you know, you get the saltiness going on all day. How about some fun dessert? And Suzanne's got a really great dessert.
Mhm.
This little cupcake You take chocolate cake mix and you put a cup of Guinness in instead of water.
Okay.
You do the eggs, you do the oil. So that's the cupcake has Guinness in it. The filling in the center, if you open this up, the center has chocolate ganache in the center. So instead of putting vanilla, ganache is melted chocolate and heavy cream.
Okay.
Instead of vanilla, we put Jameson's whiskey in it. And then the buttercream has Bailey's in it.
Have you
So
had
it's
any
got-
today?
So it's got Guinness, Irish whiskey, and Bailey's.
Yes, you get a little sugar and you get a little.
Yeah.
You get a
And it
little
is
happiness.
excellent.
A
It is
little bit of
moist.
something.
So when we brought these in and we're setting up, it's like
Don't
I
feel
could
really
not,
spoiled.
I could not help myself other than taking one of those cupcakes. So I went right for the chocolate cupcakes. Once again, absolutely excellent. Well worth the work to put into that.
Yep.
I'm sure that's a little bit of an effort involved in that.
There
but
was,
it is
but it's so,
excellent.
and your guests will just go on
Yeah.
and on and on about
Yeah,
it.
it is absolutely excellent. But I sit back and I think of St. Patrick.
Right.
He was truly a servant,
He
right?
was.
Okay, and so what does it take to be a servant? It's in Philippians chapter 2 that St. Paul was writing, and he said, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. I mean, if you think about it, what did it take for Jesus to become a servant? He humbled himself, right? I mean, he left the glories of heaven and he humbled himself. He took on human form. He became one of us, and he became man. And to humble yourself, I think in our culture we have this big misunderstanding of what it means to humble yourself. To humble yourself does not mean you think less of yourself. It means you think more of others.
Right.
Right? So you lift others up. You watch out for the welfare of others. And so Jesus humbled himself to lift us up, that we could be forgiven, right? I mean, he became obedient to death, even death upon a cross. A way of putting execution, reserved for criminals. And he allowed himself to be put to death.
Right.
So that we could be elevated, so that we could be forgiven, so that we could have the hope and the assurance of everlasting life. And then I love, if you keep on reading, the scripture says, because he did that, therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name. That in the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth. And every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. He humbled himself for us. Yep. And because he was the ultimate servant, he modeled that for us. And over again, Jesus taught us that we also should serve. It was in Matthew chapter 20 that Jesus was speaking. And he said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. But not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must become your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Just as the Son of Man, just as Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. The greatest act of servanthood, isn't it? The greatest act of servant for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's what he did for us. He served us. And then he calls us, as somebody who's loved, as somebody who's forgiven, he calls us to serve. And the mission statement of our Savior is live love. He calls us to love Jesus, to love people, and to serve the world. And so I love it, like one of the greatest examples. It was in John chapter 13. We see Jesus washing his disciples' feet.
Yeah.
Right? This is God Almighty, the one who created and sustains all things, the one who holds all things in his hands. He took the position of the lowest of servants, and he washed his disciples' feet. And he said, now that you've seen what I've done for you, you go and do likewise. And so he calls us to serve just as he served. And so my challenge for this, here we are, we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And we've got on all the green, we got on all the ruckus celebrations and parades and all that kind of good stuff. But if you really look at St. Patrick, I think one of the things that we can learn is humility and servant leadership. He was a servant.
And they enslaved him. You know what I mean? Think about that. Talk about forgiveness.
Yeah.
He was an actual slave that they had stolen from his country, and yet he went back and emancipated them with the word gospel.
Yeah, yep. His heart was, he was being called back to it, to the very people that mistreated him, that enslaved him. He went back, he went back and he served. As I said, he served for over 40 years, and the patron saint of Ireland for bringing the gospel to the country of Ireland, modern-day country of Ireland. And so where's God calling you to serve? What's God challenging you to do? You know, where do you see a need, or where is God tugging on your heartstrings? Where he's saying, you know what, this is an opportunity. This is an open door for you to make a difference in the life of somebody, or maybe in the life of you know, a community somehow or another. You know, and I always say too, you know, it's like, I always say that we're always looking for the big act, right? I mean, we always want this big impact. We're always looking for this huge change. And it always starts small. It's one step at a time. So I always challenge people, what is one small thing that you can do? Okay, one small thing, because those little things can have huge impact. Okay, and so what's one small thing that you can do to make a difference in the life of somebody? How can you serve? And I don't want to just challenge you to think about it. Do it. I challenge you to do it. Because it's kind of like paint, right? Unless you live it, unless you apply the paint, it doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so you can think about it all you want. Unless you do it, it doesn't make a difference. So what is one small thing that you can do?
You're right.
So, you know, I see we got one more dessert here, but let me ask you, you know, before we do that, let me ask you, why do people wear shamrocks on St. Patrick's Day? Do you know?
I don't know.
Why do people wear shamrocks? Because real rocks are too heavy. Shamrocks? Okay, very good. What do we have? What do we have here?
That's so easy to follow.
Oh,
So just take a French vanilla or a vanilla cake mix, and you're not going to add the eggs or the water or the oil or anything of that nature. Instead, you're going to use Diet 7-Up or Diet Tonic. And it does give it a very different consistency. So it's going to get really tall when it's actually cooking, and then it will deflate and what have you, but it's just a different consistency to it. And the entire recipe is a cake mix, liquid, and then a little bit of food coloring. You can make it any color you want. I didn't want to make it too crazy. A little bit of whipped cream cheese, and of course, my favorite.
I love that.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
You need it.
So it's
That
just
is so
something
fun.
cute and fun, and it's different. So
Kids would love that.
they would.
Yeah, that's super
What did you
fun.
think? You didn't
Especially
say
as far as
anything.
it rises.
I'd stick with the cupcakes.
He loves chocolate.
I speak the truth. I'm going to speak the truth. I would stick with the
Well,
cupcakes.
mine's
I
gonna
love
take
you,
a
honey.
little
I love you,
more
honey.
But it's
But
not
mine
chocolate.
you shouldn't eat and drive.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
Just put that out
Yeah,
there.
the cupcakes, no, they were excellent. Okay. So hey, what do you get when you cross a 4-leaf clover with some poison ivy?
I have no
Anybody?
idea.
What do you get when you cross a 4-leaf clover with poison ivy? A rash of good luck. And that's what we hope for you. Okay, that's what we hope
God
for you. We
bless
want you
you.
to be blessed. You have a great week. Have a great St. Patty's Day celebration. Be safe out there. And remember what he is known for. Yeah, it's a great celebration. It's a lot of fun. But remember, he's a servant. And God's call on you is also to serve. To use the gifts, the talents, the abilities that you have been blessed with. The things that make you special to make a difference in the life of somebody else.
Love it.
Okay, hey, one last one. What's
Okay.
Irish and stays out all night long?
My daughter.
Irish that. No.
In the college days.
What's Irish and stays out all night long? Patio furniture. You get it? Patio furniture. Hey, you have a great day. God
These
bless.
are awesome.
And live love. Bye.